Okay, old Reno. We talk about old Reno, new Reno. When growing up in this town, there's been so much change, right? I grew up here. I've seen how much Reno's grown. You also grew up here.
Grew up here?
Been here.
Yeah.
Been here your whole life. There's a thing about real estate and development in Reno that people either have a really hard time with or they're fully on board with, you know? Like everyone's like, you know, Reno's grown so fast. The infrastructure wasn't ready for it. It's hard to get a dentist appointment. It's hard to find a specialist if you know, healthcare's tough. It's just we got big so fast because there's a lot that we have to offer here and a lot of people who want to live here.
Yeah.
But in seeing it change over your lifetime, what do you see happening here?
Well, I mean, I grew up here when, you know, Sparks people will know this, when Vista ended, you know, at the top of the hill, you know, up there. As a matter of fact, I remember when it ended, like at Prater Way, you know, it was like back then, you know, when we used to go do things up in the hills where DeAndrea is, you know. Listen, we don't need to talk about that here. That's a whole nother conversation. So what we did out there, which sometimes was good and sometimes was not good. So
in Reno, we didn't do anything on any.
No, you didn't do anything when it came to that, right? No. So
Sparks is a different country.
Are you Reno? Like Reno High?
See, this is another old Reno thing.
Is this a Reno High thing?
Reno versus Sparks.
Yeah.
No, McQueen.
Oh, you're McQueen, even worse. No, I'm kidding. So I was Reed High. So yeah, Reed and McQueen battled back in the day.
Tells us everything we need to know about you.
Exactly, that tells me everything I know about you. So that makes total sense now.
But what do you think about how fast Reno's grown?
You know, I think it's good and it's bad. I think it's really tough for governments and you know, people to project that far in advance. And you know, and I've been, obviously we all been to other cities. Like I can think of like Phoenix. Phoenix is like infrastructure's seems like 10 years in front of like our infrastructure. Like when they build the highways, they build them, you know, all the bridges and stuff 6 lanes wide.
Right from the get-go.
Right from the get-go, but they only have 2 lanes. You know what I mean? Well, we never did that here. And I don't really know the reasons why we do that and don't. I mean, just think, I always say this, if our leaders back, you know, way before me and, you know, everybody would have had the foresight. I think, like, can you imagine what if McCarran was actually a freeway?
Yeah.
And not a ring road?
Yeah.
Like what that would do, like if they would have thought about that, like having a ring road just in a city is really cool. But having a ring freeway would have solved, there would be no traffic problems if you were to think about it. It would have been, but you know.
That would have required a lot of
work and a lot of, you know, foresight to think about. But it is cool that you can get on McCarran and literally just drive in circles. And, you know, it's like not a lot of people and places have that, but so it's really difficult to project that, and then you got to have the money to be able to do that, right? And so I think, you know, that's one of the disadvantages to being in Nevada, I think, is, you know, we're so reliant on the gaming, you know what I mean, to bring our tax revenue in. We don't have another tax revenue source, which is a good and a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it keeps the taxes low, but you got to have to sacrifice other areas. And, you know, so yeah, is the infrastructure, could it be better? Sure. Is it a great town? Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously that's why we live here and that's why we continue to live here.
That's why we stay here. We raise our families here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the change that came with Reno growing, a lot of it's been amazing. I mean, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm brown. And Reno's gotten so much more culture with all this growth, right? There's been more people, more diversity, but beyond that, like better restaurants, more bars. Like when I came out of college is when Reno started to get really cool. But the thing that was kind of tough is that it was cool for about it was cool and affordable for about 5 minutes before it became cool and expensive. So you being a developer, a builder of homes, that puts you in the hot seat today because a problem with affordability is a lack of homes, right? This isn't rocket science. If we want to make homes more affordable, we need to build more of them.
You know, listen, the price of any house, whether it's affordable or not, always starts with what we're sitting on the dirt, right? So if the dirt is expensive, that's where the base price of the house is always generated from any developer. I mean, anybody would tell you that. If you have a $500,000 lot, well, all of a sudden that's a $2.5 million house that you got to put on it. You know what I mean? So when you start doing the math, it also depends on the dirt. So really, the land has to become affordable. So, and when we started developing in this town, there was lots of flat, open land. Well, we live in a bowl.
When was that? When you
Right.
started developing?
So, I mean, listen, I started getting into construction and stuff in the late 90s. You know what I mean? And there was lots of affordable land. We still had the whole North Valleys. South Reno wasn't really developed yet. Damani Ranch and all that stuff was just starting to get developed. But that's affordable land to be able to develop, because it's not, you don't have to put the money into the dirt work and the moving of the material, all that stuff. Anytime that you start going up on hills and stuff like, the development cost just goes astronomical. Yeah. I mean, because it's dirt you have to move, and you have to get the sewer up there and the power, and it just becomes way more challenging. And so we're getting low on flat land around here. And so now you have to start going outside, to the Fernleys and the Fallons and stuff like that. And then it becomes really challenging, right, to get people to commute
Want
back
to live
Reno.
out there.
Yeah. But they all want to live in the valley here, but the valley there's not a whole lot of flat land. You just drive around and there's just not a whole lot of, flat property out there. That's where in my opinion, the base starts. So if you got to build a cheap house, you can't have a lot that costs you, $150,000 or $200,000, a developed lot. It just doesn't. There's just not. I mean, I know the developers get knocked on for affordability and this kind of stuff, but as much as we would love to go do this for free, I mean, we can't. We have families to feed just like everybody else, and things like that. And so you would be actually surprised how much profit that developers and home builders actually make on these.
Because it's hard to squeeze it out.
It's really hard. And you got to remember this project that we're sitting right here started 2.5 years ago. I mean, and the price of land that we paid for this for 18 lots is still pretty high. You know what I mean? Even just on a little, infill lot like this is high, and that land cost sets the price of the house. And if you don't have affordable property, you can't have an affordable house. It's just simple math.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think it's really interesting for people to understand these concepts because they're not as complicated as you think. One thing that, and I don't know if this is unique to Reno because I haven't grown up or lived anywhere else. I haven't specifically worked in the real estate industry in any other market. But one thing I know about Reno is we don't like density. We fight density really hard. Yeah. It's got to be unique that in the 89509 zip code, we have 2 golf courses. Right. In city proper. Yeah. Typically when I go other places.
They used to be out in the middle of nowhere.
And typically when you go to cities that are of our size and growing as fast as we are, you wouldn't see that kind of land inside city proper not being developed for housing. Right. And I think it's something that Reno really struggles to wrap their brain around is a lot of people want to live in central Reno. This is the most desirable zip code. Everyone wants to be in the heart of town. That means we have to build in the heart of town. And in today's day and age now, with where the city is, that means higher density, don't you think?
Yeah, that's the only way you can do it is with higher density when you're doing infill stuff like we're doing inside the McCarran Ring. The city has really tried to promote, development inside the McCarran Ring. And so they've made it a little bit easier for us, not easy. But easier for us to do that with zoning and stuff like that. And some of the updated zoning codes over the last 10 years have made it a little bit easier. But you still get pushback. You know what I mean? When you want to come to do a development like this in an area like this, there's people that just, they don't want development. And I understand that. But there's a fine line there between, hey, we have to build houses and this is the kind of property like developers and people like me are interested in, is this infill stuff, and it creates challenges, for sure. But that's the only way you can do this and even make $1 on this kind of stuff is you have to build high density stuff. There's just no other way around it on a piece of property like this. I can't build a custom home here or put 2 houses on this and make any money. There would be no money. Matter of fact, I'd lose money.
Well, and I'm a firm believer, you have to tell me if you disagree. There's the concept you talked about with the land has to be affordable.
Has to be.
But I also believe that more housing benefits all housing. So people will argue when you build luxury townhomes, you're not solving the affordability crisis in Reno. And I'd say alone, no. But more housing over time improves the cost of housing for everyone. And that does mean that, yes, more apartment buildings helps housing costs in general in Reno. So when any type of new housing is helping in the long-term goal because we have a supply and demand problem.
True. And I think there's a pendulum there, right? So it's like you don't want to get too many houses because then what happens in 2006 happens. You know what I mean? So you have too many houses. I lived through that. We worked for a developer. We just kept going. We didn't, one day, literally I could remember the day is like that we would have no problem in selling releases. Every time we release a house, 10 houses, and then all of a sudden, the next release, we didn't sell 10 houses. We sold 2. And it was like literally like that then. But we didn't back then. We didn't. I don't think anybody foresaw what was going to happen. And so what happened is we just kept building, and not just us. Every developer in town. We just kept building, and so then you end up with too many houses and not enough people. And then what has to happen when you have too many houses?
You have to cut the cost.
And you have to the prices. You want to sell them. So then it starts driving the cost down. And I think in this town, the developers and the people have done a really good job this last time of not overbuilding, and trying to just keep that pendulum just right. And so when you see some of the bigger developers, they're not out just doing 20 specs at a time. They don't have 20 specs on inventory. They might have 5 or 10, which is, and then the next month, if they're not projecting that we're going to have 5 or 10, they don't do any more. And I think that's really smart. Not, and obviously they're doing it for different reasons because, they don't want to have to put out all that capital to have 20 houses. They don't want, it's cheaper for them to just let the land sit there than it is to go, put 20 specs out, you know what I mean, and millions of dollars, and then carry the cost of that, hoping that you're going to sell them. So I think we've been smart with that, but I see what you're saying. It's like, yeah, but what would happen is if we built too many houses, it would drive the cost down, not because it would be less expensive to build it, because you would be up against competition, so the competition would drive the cost down. Well, then the opposite happens, right? Then it's like, okay, well, now my margin, whatever that is for each one of these people is, is going to get lower and lower and lower and lower, and then it's not that big. So now you're talking about, do I want to be here doing this for free? I mean, yeah, if we didn't have families to feed and that kind of stuff, it'd be great. I'd love to be able to just build houses for charity, but it doesn't work that way. So, and then people like me or some of the other smaller developers in town, we're up against these corporations too. And these corporations don't necessarily have to make money on these houses. So, they don't have to make, they have a different revenue stream from being publicly traded and stuff like that.
But it's a different quality of product.
It is, but it's the same. We're all in competition together is the point I'm trying to make. Right. So it really strangles, people like me or some of our, other local builders in town who have a really tough time competing, you know what I mean? When we get into a pricing war with some of these bigger builders, we're not going to win. We're going to lose. And so you have to kind of strategize about that as like a risk, right? So like, I don't want to get into a price war with these other builders because we're, people like us and, are going to lose. No, we don't have the pockets to be able to
There's so much that goes into choosing the price point. And it's not just about building it today. It's about what started 2 years ago with buying the land and getting this all in motion to make it happen. Right. When nationwide, we're 4.5 million homes short to meet the demand. Yeah. There's a huge shortage. And you were saying, builders are playing the game differently now because they got hosed so badly before. And there is a lot of development happening in Reno, big builders, local builders. They're trying to build the homes.
Good group of local builders for sure.
But like you said, it has to be done very carefully because nobody wants to be left holding the bag when everything could change.
Yeah, it's a big risk for especially local builders. Not so big of a risk for the the publicly traded builders, but there is a huge risk there. And I'm a very small, minute, as compared to some of the other local builders who, but yeah, it's a lot of money that you have to put out. land, the construction costs, and you're projecting that out years and years in advance. And so to keep going, it's like a train. I always use the old adage, it's like a train going down the tracks. The locomotive is 2 years out in front of us. You know what I mean? And that's the land. That's the acquisition of the land and the development of that property. All that stuff just takes a ton of time and money. And then you have to sit on that for, a long period of time. And it's like, that's risky for people like us. You know what I mean?
People like you, though, who are like true Reno natives, as you said, third generation, but then a developer with all the knowledge and all the professional background you have and that experience. When you come to do this project where you did do density in a city that is just starting to wrap their brain around it, and you are putting more homes right into the heart of Reno, what did you take into consideration in putting together this project to make it appeal to new Reno and old Reno?
I think both, but it was more about finding a niche. This isn't. If I being from old Reno, this isn't the kind of construction that we're used to here. This is different. So we had to find a niche, something that was different that people weren't doing. That, to be honest with you, I like I explained to you, I don't want to be in competition with some of the bigger builders and what they can do. I can't be. You know what I mean? That's not what we can do. It's not the game we're playing. I have to play in a lot smaller, playing field here. So the bigger developers just don't. This isn't profitable enough for them. You know what I mean? Doing a project like this, it takes too long. It's not. Doesn't turn over stuff, quick enough for them. It takes, like I said, it's a numbers game. But for me, I can do that. So in smaller people like me can do that.
You could be really intentional in how you do this.
Yeah, this is the only, project that we have going on. Like some of these guys have 14, 15 different subdivisions. This is not what we do. We have one, and then we start this one, and then we finish it, and we go to the next one. So I think to answer your question is, I would love to be able to build houses that are, 4,000 or 5,000 square feet on acre lots. But there's a lot of competition in that space. And for us, that just wasn't, this wasn't what we wanted to do. So we had to change, and you have to pivot, you have to rotate, you have to adapt. And so that's what we did with this.
And what do you think were the choices in putting this together that appeal to livability, that appeal to what people in Reno want, but also your niche that you've been mentioning, like the niche audience for this product?
I mean, when we first did this a few years ago on our other project, we didn't really know what our
target audience
was going to be. Thank you. And it ended up being kind of a split between the two. And so we ended up with 50% of the people that we never expected, older retired people. We didn't expect them to be really quite interested in a contemporary townhome. And believe it or not, there's a lot of interest in that. And I think it's because of the architecture is appealing to older people, and which you wouldn't expect, but it is. And retired people, and the fact that they can lock the door and leave. So, and they don't have to be worried about anything is huge.
It's an easy way of life.
Very. Yeah, but it's different. You don't have the big yard. You don't have all the stuff to take care of. The houses are pretty low maintenance. There's not a whole lot you have to do. So all that time that you spent on those big pieces of property, that you would have had that I don't want to say trade down, but, trade down really from, something that you had with a huge yard and, you had all your kids, and now it's like, okay, we want to simplify our life and we want to go enjoy things out traveling or visiting our kids or, whatever it is, you can do that in this. And I think that was the kind of the surprising thing. I think that for us was like, oh, we didn't really expect that, but yeah, it's
these feature, though, a lot of things that are really true to Nevada living, like the indoor-outdoor living. Like,
has to have that. Yeah, it's absolutely necessary. I'm glad you brought that up because people either move here or they enjoy here because they want to be outside. Yeah. And so in a townhouse, the one thing that you don't typically have is you don't have a yard, and that's a really hard thing, I think, for people to give up, is that outdoor living. And that was like right from the very beginning, like we have to have outside living, and that's what makes us unique, even compared to some of our other competitors now that just popped up all of a sudden. We've had a couple people. It's kind of funny how that works. But
Trendsetter with 14
yeah,
on Casio.
yeah. So but having a space to go outside is huge, and if I was living in one of these, it would be that would be a non-starter if I didn't have a space or something like that, for sure.
I would love to live in one of these.
Me too.
If you think now, like where this evolves, because if you're going to continue, I think what you did with 14 on Casio, what we're doing right now with 18 on Lakeside, it's being a little bit ahead of what Reno's ready for.
Yeah.
So then what's next? How are you going to be a little bit ahead of what they're ready for next time?
That's a good question. I mean, even on these ones, we've changed these from what we did at Casio, and there's some cool features that we'll tell you about that you don't have even in our competition, even at Casio. In here, and we don't want to spill the beans yet, but there's some cool stuff in here that I don't know anybody else is doing in this town, even in in production stuff, in Spanish Springs or Northwest Reno or wherever. Single family houses that don't have some of the features that these particular houses have. So it'd be cool to be able to showcase that stuff and show you guys some of those things. But I'm always thinking, so you never know. So you never know what I can come up with. So I'll figure something out for sure.
Can't wait.
Yeah.